All right, welcome back to Startup Hacks. So you think you need a supercomputer to run AI models? Well, we're going to dive into that a little bit today because I don't know if everybody totally understands exactly what goes into running some of these models at scale. Now, this gives you a lot of different options, and I want to be very real and break down real world numbers for what you entrepreneurs and small business owners particularly might be looking at if you want to dive into some AI costs and running some AI yourself and what it looks like, right? But I also want to give everybody kind of the scope of what we're talking about when we talk about these multi-hundred billion input models. So let's dive into this today because I've got a lot of really great information that we're going to break down to make really helpful for you today. So let's dive in. All right, welcome back to Startup Hack. I'm Spencer Thompson. Here at Startup Hack, we love to train software developers that are licensed coding boot camps, as well as to build custom software solutions for companies. With a decade of executive leadership as a fractional CTO and 25 years in software development, I've mastered transforming tech teams and products. All right, so DeepSeek R1 hardware requirements and costs. And if you're wondering what it takes to actually run DeepSeek R1 models locally, so we're going to go all the way from 1.5 billion parameters, and we're going to break this down to all the way up to 671 billion, their largest model here. And we're going to break down exactly what this would cost to run if you were looking to run these locally and what this would entail. Now, running DeepSeek R1 models isn't just about downloading the software. It's about having the right hardware. So this is the whole reason why NVIDIA is worth almost $1 trillion company at this point, right? So whether you're a startup or a seasoned developer, you've got to be able to understand the requirements to be knowledgeable about what it takes to run some of these. So let's dive in because I've got a great presentation here with a lot of information for us to digest. All right, so one of the very first things we're going to dive into is talk about the hardware cost to run DeepSeek R1, okay? Now, first of all, if you want to dive into cloud hosting, a lot of people are just thinking, well, I'll just go buy some cloud hosting, right? Now, it doesn't sound that much at first, but $3.39 per hour to run a single H100. And I'm going to kind of break down what this is going to mean because the H100 has 48 gigs of hardware, of VRAM. And what this means, I'm going to break this down here for you. And so let me break this down just a little bit more before we dive into even some of these costs. Okay, so an H100 has 80 gigabytes of GPU. Now, one of the first things that you're going to have to understand, and I'm going to explain this as I break down these different models here for you, but how much VRAM or GPU RAM, right, the video RAM that's on a graphics card is how much you're going to need to be able to run some of these models, right? So, and I'll break down exactly what these numbers are as I get into my further slides. But let's say you just want to do cloud hosting at first. So you want to be able to run one H100, and I'll probably break down what this is as we get more into the other models. But this would be $3.39 per hour, which works up to $81 per day. Now that doesn't sound too bad. $569 per week. That's getting a little pricey. That's $2,467 per month. Now, you can't even run the largest DeepSeek model on this, right? This would only run one of their middle level models. And so you're not even running the top model. In order to be able to run the top model in the cloud, you would have to be able to have at least 5, and I'm going to break down all the numbers here for you, but at least 5 of these H100s. So generally speaking, what they jump to is you usually look at 8 times an eight graphics cards of H100s, right? So now, and we'll talk a little bit about this if you just want to buy the hardware yourself, right? Now, what this works out to run, if you want to run the largest DeepSeek model in the cloud, and this is one of the cheapest hosting providers that I could find. So if you want to run this in the cloud, that would be $23.92 per hour, $574 per day, $13,000 per week, and a staggering $330,000 per month just to be able to run the DeepSeek R1 model on the highest hardware. And this is on DigitalOcean. I'm a big fan of DigitalOcean. They're one of the best providers. I've used them for over a decade now. Love DigitalOcean. But when you start looking at hosting, looking at cloud hosting for video GPU, which is what you need to be able to run these large language models, you're looking at over $330,000 per month to run these in the cloud. That is absolutely insane. And that's if you just want to be able to run a decent little set against these. This is to run one model to run in that. So this is why you can see somebody would start to say, okay, I'm going to buy my own hardware, host it in a data center, and run that, right? So that's kind of what started to send me down this this rabbit hole that I have for this video here, right? So let's jump in and say, I want to go ahead and run my own hardware. What's it going to cost me to run this in a data center and run this myself? So in order to run the DeepSeek 1 billion model, right? So this is DeepSeek's 1 billion model, which is their lowest one. You actually don't even need a graphics card for this, right? You can actually run it just on CPU. So it's designed to be able to run it one CPU. So let's just say you go pick up a decent gaming machine off of Facebook Marketplace, pick it up for $500. You know, there's no GPU, so there's no extra cost for that. Total cost $500, costs you about $20 a month. Now, this is if you want to run one with the 1.5 billion size parameters. Sorry, there's a little typo there. 1.5 billion parameters, right? This can comfortably be run on the CPU. And you're going to get about 13 tokens per second just off my experience. This is going to be very CPU dependent, right? If you have a more modern CPU versus not, but roughly you're going to get this. Now, the accuracy of a 1.5 billion parameter is really low. And that's going to be a whole different video because this one's all just about the cost of running it, not to necessarily talk about the efficiency. So, but just trust me on this one, and we can get into all the benchmarks later. But the efficiency around a 1.5 billion model isn't going to cost you much, roughly around $20 a month of electricity if you just keep that machine on 24/7. But this would allow you to get started, to be able to start to run stuff. And this is the reason why I'm a huge fan of these small language models. Now, let's jump up just a little bit here. There's a huge amount of efficiency that you jump to in the 7 billion and 8 billion models, right? So there's a lot that come with these. Now, pretty generally, DeepSeek runs very efficiently. Most other models, if you're going to do an 8 billion parameters, you need about 1.2 that on your gigabytes of VRAM, right? Now, the DeepSeek ones, part of what really rattled a lot of people was how efficient these models were in size. So you can actually run an 8 billion parameter comfortably on an 8 gigabytes of RAM on the GPU and still maintain for the larger size of the model and still get very high performance on this, right? Easily run on your base, that PC server, that same $500 PC you had. GPUs for this, I was finding 3090s pretty consistent, or excuse me, 3060s with 8 gigs of RAM pretty consistently for $250. Find tons of refurbished ones out there. So you could pretty comfortably run an 8 billion model parameter of DeepSeek R1 on a 250, so total cost is about $750 and still running right around $20 a month. That one graphics card isn't going to, this isn't a major graphics card. It's not going to add a ton of more electricity. I know all you execs out there, but we're keeping this pretty ballpark here. This will give you pretty decent amount of levels. You could start to build something against this. We recently were trying to do some email tools where we were building against AI so that the AI could actually run against we could run every email that would send out against AI to personalize the emails. And as we were doing this, we found that the difference between the 1.5 billion model parameter and even the 8 billion, there was actually a pretty good jump from even 7 to 8 billion, was pretty effective. So I could do this with a server that's a $750 and $20 a month of electricity. Pretty inexpensive, right? So lots you can do with just less than $1,000, right? So let's jump to the 14 billion because now you start to see our hardware costs go up a little bit, but we're still not talking even anything near what we were talking about in the hosting from the cloud, right? So model size 14 billion parameter. Efficiencies from 8 billion to 14 billion definitely go up. Again, don't have the exact benchmarks in front of me, but it's definitely more efficient and more accurate, right? Now, this is definitely going to require a 16 gigabyte graphics card. There's kind of a jump here because from this one, you can find some 12 gig graphics cards, but the 12 gig graphics cards won't quite run the 14 billion parameters, right? So you really got to jump to this 16 gig graphics card here. And with that, you're going to be looking at, I'm checking out some of my notes here, but so these 16 gig graphics cards, I was looking really at the RTX, get my notes here, RTX A4100 or an RTX 4060 Ti, and I'm not totally sure about the Radeon, the RX 7600 XT graphics. So it looks like it had 16 gigs of graphics memory as well. So really your A4000 or your 4060 Ti, right, are the ones you're going to have that are going to have 16 gigs of graphics VRAM here. And again, that's going to cost you roughly, I was finding them pretty consistently about $750, right? give or take, right? So, if you buy them new, if you buy them refurbished, etc. But you're about $1,200 in. Now because these are pretty beefy graphics cards, your wattage actually goes up about, so you're about $25 per month. So very reasonable still. Like, this is still something that I feel that most small businesses could get into and start to run this in a cost-efficient manner on hardware that they could host themselves, right? So this becomes something that becomes very realistic and efficient to be able to start to build some AI agents and tools against. Now, are you building AGI? Absolutely not. Are you building out the largest models that's going to be optimized to answer everything under the sun? Totally not. This is for specialized agent builds, but I still feel like you can actually do a lot of development work against this. Now, this is where stuff starts to get a little interesting. So at 32 billion, your scores are definitely starting to go up. You're getting a much more efficient model. What I was looking for these was really like the RTX 3090s. Your cost on these just on the GPU alone was about $1,250. You're getting 24 gigs of VRAM, which the 32 gig model seems to fit nicely into, right? And so if I remember right, it's about 18 or 19 gigs on the 32 billion model, and you can get this comfortably into the 24 gigs of RAM. Now, again, your server cost still can be that same base PC that you picked up, just needs one graphics slot. You're not doing anything crazy with this, right? But your graphics card's getting a little pricey, right? So you're in the $1,250 to $1,500 range, and you're looking at $1,750 to $2,000 hardware cost. Energy costs, again, you're definitely going up. You're going to run right at about $30. So, and that might even be high. $30 might even be a little bit high. Now into this range, again, something that I still feel that a small business. So I really think in these two ranges, you're talking about something most small businesses could really start to run and developers could work against. Now let's talk about the 70 billion model, right? So 70 billion model, you're looking at 48 gigs of VRAM. So you're definitely talking about a pretty stacked up card now at this point. You're really going to need something that's going to be able to run 2 of the 24 gigs. So this really is two times the previous one, right? So you're really about 2 times this one is what you're really looking at. You're going to run 2 of the graphics cards. So you definitely need to step up to something that's a little bit more than your base computer. You might be able to find some higher end gaming systems that have dual PCI slots. I know a lot of new modern motherboards for gaming and stuff will have dual PCI slots. You have to run 2 PCI slots with 24 gigs of graphics cards. Definitely looking at about $2,500 worth of graphics cards because it's truly just double. It's just times 2 of the 24. But you're again running the 70 billion. Now you're getting a really high score here for a $3,500 cost. This is still something I feel most small businesses, if you had a real model you were trying to run against. Now, if you're just dabbling into it, this is probably starting to stretch past what most people are going to be spending on this. Your cost is definitely going to go up because running 2 graphics cards, you're going to have to either have either one very powerful power supply or else 2 power supplies. But again, you're definitely going to be stepping up here. So you're either looking at a dual PCI slot server or else a very higher end gaming card or gaming rig now. Okay, now this is where things get interesting because there's a huge jump, and this is where I really think that a lot of this is becoming very interesting because there's this huge jump where you go from the 70 billion model to the next level, and so there's a definite increase, right? So it goes right from 70 up to 671 billion. And this is where I think things just start getting ridiculous, right? Because in order to run this, you have to have about 480 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, I'm reading stuff out there about people running this on systems that have like 1 terabyte of RAM. You got to have a really fast RAM, and you'd have to have a super fast CPU and very high-end motherboards to be able to be a Northbridge to be able to be running this much efficiently. I still don't think you'd beat the actual build. I think your GPU or VRAM is still going to run circles around this. In order to get a server that can even begin to handle this, your server alone is going to run about $5,000. So just what I was finding was some server models out there that had like 8 PCI slots, right? So you're talking now about diving into the GPUs. and get into some massive GPUs, right? So this is where you're definitely diving into the A100s or the H100s, things that have, at least, 80 gigs. Because even a 48 gig graphics card, which you can find some old A100s and stuff that'll have this, even those won't, because really seems like you max out most of the servers at around, until you get into the customized servers, you're really maxing out these servers at 8 slots of PCI Express, right? So again, you suddenly go from this staggering cost of something that is realistic, right, to $150,000 of total costs. Not to mention that this is going to take some pretty serious build, and your monthly cost on running just the electricity alone is going to be about $1,000 a month. You're starting to talk mortgage size level stuff here, right? Like this is something that's going to start to reach outside of pretty much all small businesses, right? And in that case, you're definitely going to be starting to look at something that's going to be much beefier, and you're going to go back to kind of some of your cloud hosting options. But even if you are still doing this is where, like, when you see a $330,000, so let's scale all the way back to the front of our slides here, and you look at a $330,000 per month where you own nothing. Instead, when you do this, you actually own it. Now, again, high availability in the cloud, all of that, versus you trying to keep this into a data center and keeping a high availability. Lots of different trade-off here. But definitely, I think this is, very eye-opening, hopefully to a lot of people, to kind of find out what it actually costs to run these various size of models, and why it is that AGI is so complicated. Because even at 671 billion parameters, we're still so far from AGI, right? We're still just like orders of magnitudes off of AGI, that it makes it ridiculous to even be talking about these massive numbers, right? Now, I'm happy to post where I got a lot of this data, but I spent a couple of hours doing some research on this, and this is something I'm pretty well versed in. So we've been running AskMini.ai, which is a great service where you can actually request and run against multiple, and we're actually just now launching with Grok right now. So we actually have Grok as well as some DeepSeek models. Again, looking at this hardware hosting, I'm not spending $330,000 a month to host, the 671 billion parameter. I think right now we're hosting the 8 billion parameter because, again, we're just being reasonable here. But if you want to try out DeepSeek, you want to try out Grok, you want to try out some of these, AskMini.ai is a great service that you can install a Chrome extension, and on any page you can click on it, and it will actually go and summarize the page for you and query against these. Or you can also open up a chat window and chat against any of these various different AIs. So I know a lot about this. We've been working with AI. I've worked with it on about half a dozen different projects at this point. But what I can tell you is that this is not trivial when we're starting to talk about the hardware costs on these. And it's the reason why we see the big, Magnificent Seven saying that between all of them, there's going to be an estimated $1 trillion worth of spending going into development of AI. And they're hoping that they can get the money out of it. I'm really curious to see if they'll get that money out of it. So that's why I'm really interested when when we start talking about some of these costs. When you're talking about something that costs $150,000 to get into, or in another case, something that costs $330,000 a month to run, you can see now why I'm interested in these like 7 and 8 billion models. I'm really interested in taking some of these things, optimizing them and getting them to run so that you can run them and host them in your own way and start to build AI agents that can solve specific purposes. These are things that I'm really interested in. I think there's a long ways that we can go with this. So I'm really interested to see, as we continue to squeeze more and more efficiency out of these small models. Now, I'm curious to hear what you all think. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think spending $330,000 a month is pocket change and you're like, it's totally worth it, Spencer? What are you talking about? Love to hear your thoughts. Best compliment I can get to these is when you all leave a comment down below, and make sure you like and subscribe, because here at Startup Hack, we love to train software developers in our licensed coding boot camps, as well as to build custom software solutions for companies. So make sure you hit us up and reach out, because we'd love to help you out. And otherwise, I've got some great information here.
Want to become a software developer but don't want to spend 4 years in college and rack up massive student loan debts? Think you need technical expertise to get started? Welcome to Startup Hack, a better way to start your software career without student loans and years without income. One-on-one tutoring is included so you never get stuck and have guidance through the whole process. No technical experience is necessary. Learn at your own pace and in your own space. Startup Hack has worked with local state agencies in your area to make it so that qualifying students can get the program costs covered entirely and students can start earning while they learn.
Startup Hack's .NET Coding Bootcamp was a game changer for my career. As someone with no prior programming experience, I was initially intimidated by the idea of learning to code, but the instructors at Startup Hack broke down complex concepts into easy to understand lessons and provided hands-on projects that really cemented my understanding. The curriculum was comprehensive and up to date and got me ready for my first job. What really set Startup Hack apart was the focus on practical, real-world skills. Thanks to Startup Hack, I landed my dream job as a .NET developer within weeks of graduating. I went from knowing nothing about code to building professional-grade web applications in just a few intense months. If you're looking to break into .NET development or level up your coding skills, I cannot recommend Startup Hack enough.
Complete our 3-month coding bootcamp, gain hands-on experience, and land a paid internship. With 2 years of experience, on average, our graduates are making over $80,000 per year. The 3-month program includes technologies from Microsoft, Google, and Facebook. No debt, just a quick path to earning. Check out startuphack.com to code your future and start today.